pledge will be led by the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Johnson.
I'm here this morning just to address education. How do we know? Because the people have told us so. We represent the ideal way to alleviate the shortages is by ensuring that children of all races and both genders receive the basic grounding in science and mathematics that will prepare them to pursue careers as scientists, engineers, and technologists. Is it not time, then, for America to grow morally? For those who fear to answer this question, I will answer it for them. The time is now.
Now, more than ever, what happens in Washington impacts us here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Your Congresswoman, Eddie Bernice Johnson, will help you understand what goes on inside the federal government and share perspectives from today's leading policymakers and opinion leaders. And now, your Congresswoman, Eddie Bernice Johnson.
Hello and welcome to this Capitol Report. Today we have Andrew Sperling of the National Alliance of Mental Illness, or NAMI, is my guest. As you know, we passed legislation last year to give full attention to persons with mental illnesses through our insurance networks. Mr. Sperling is very familiar with all of this since he's a federal legislative advocate for NAMI and formerly worked with the National Community Health Mental Health Care Council here on Capitol Hill, and for Congressman Dick Swett. And so he graduated from Tulane University and received his master's degree from George Washington University and his law degree from Franklin Pierce Law Center. And so NAMI is the largest grassroots mental health organization in the United States. It has affiliates in all 50 states. It has more than 1,100 communities around the country, and it includes Dallas, where we have a pretty active group. In fact, the 2009 NAMI Dallas Walk will be held on Saturday, May 2nd, to raise money for the good work that NAMI does in Dallas. I encourage you to find more information about the walk on my website. I have been invited to be a part of it, and I hope that my schedule will permit it. Thank you for coming, Mrs. Sperling.
Thank you, Congresswoman Johnson.
Tell me a bit about your daily activities.
Well, I work as NAMI's legislative representative, so I'm here on Capitol Hill meeting with members of Congress and their staff to educate them about mental illness, about the challenges of living with illnesses such as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, major depression, and to try and pursue public policies that will improve the lives of individuals living with these severe disorders.
Is it difficult to try to get understanding from many members?
Some, but not all. Luckily, we have some like you that have experience in the real world with mental illness, and it's not really a process of education. You come with a wealth of experience. But there are other members that really have deep-seated misunderstandings about what these disorders are and what the challenge of living with them is. Mental illness is often misunderstood. I remember some years ago there was a headline in a Dallas daily paper that there was no such thing as mental illness, and that frightened me because at the time I was a nurse in psychiatric nursing. Is that any better? Can you tell me how it can be detected and what are some of the early interventions that need to take place? Well, with severe disorders such as schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, we have now more and better diagnostic criteria and diagnostic tools to make an accurate diagnosis early, which is absolutely critical because if we intervene early in the course of these disorders, we can very much mitigate the long-term prospects and help an individual reach recovery quicker.
Mm-hmm. The veterans, the military people who are coming back, a large percentage of them are having this post-traumatic stress syndrome. And I have placed in the law to do early diagnosis with professionals so that we can make the intervention early and perhaps avoid a long-term illness dealing with emotional problems. Have you noticed any of that, or is it all so Veterans Administration that the general public does not?
Well, people think that this is just the responsibility of the Veterans Administration. It is not. In fact, we need to be catching this early before an individual moves into the VA system. And so the Army, The Air Force has a terrific suicide prevention program. The Secretary of the Army, Pete Guerin, your former colleague from Texas, has invested heavily in a new suicide prevention initiative in the Army. The Marine Corps is moving a little slower on this, but they're moving toward early intervention. But where we really think we need to make the most progress, quite frankly, is with the National Guard and Reserve units. As you know, these conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan have placed enormous burden on the state National Guard, particularly in Texas, where so it really is getting the tools to the Adjutant General of the Texas National Guard and other National Guards around the country, where these individuals move very quickly from being in theater in Iraq and Afghanistan to really going back into civilian life and not really tethered to a military base the way it is with active duty.
And yet, when you see them being deployed, they're seen as regular military.
Absolutely.
And so their experience is the same as any other person going to a war site.
Absolutely.
And they're also people that are usually a little bit older than the average person that goes into the military, with probably more developed families, more responsibility. When I have visited, I have seen the only difference I've been able to tell whether they might be reservists or in some other kind of a voluntary type of military responsibility is that they might be a little older. But other than that, they have the same responsibilities, they dress the same, and they are subjecting themselves to danger like any other military person. But it could be easily overlooked when they come back and just expected to go back to the reserve unit or whatever.
In many cases, they have families with children. They immediately move back into a civilian job where there may not be the supports and services that they need to maintain that job. There's stress on the family, sometimes substance abuse involved, what we call self-medicating, where they're experiencing anxiety, depression, and they treat that with alcohol that can lead to family dissolution and stress in the family, enormous clusters of difficulties that these men and women face.
Now, do they have the same privileges as any other veteran coming back?
Not necessarily. There's a certain post-deployment transition where they get health benefits and other types of benefits. But in order to go to the VA, they will qualify eventually for services from the VA, but then have to go through the process of qualifying for services from the VA to actually get and attain a service-connected impairment that allows them to get to the front of the line for VA services. And in many VA facilities around the country, there are enormous waiting lists where you seek services and they tell you, get an appointment, but that may not be for 5 or 6 or 7 months. So there's already enormous stress on the VA from the pre-existing veteran population from World War II and Korea and Vietnam. And these individuals have to go through that process to qualify for VA services.
Well, that might be something we need to do to speed that along, because this is also the probable age group that if they get into an emotional spend, it probably could be a little bit more permanent, because they are older, they do have different responsibilities, and then facing the fact that they might not be as welcome in the Veteran Affairs facilities. They probably are, but once they go through all of the necessary procedures to make them eligible, they are being put off for quite a while.
Yeah, and what NAMI wants to see is also the public mental health system, particularly in Texas, your MHMR centers, partnering with the State National Guard so that we can catch these individuals so they don't have to fall into the VA system and get them the supports they need in the communities where they live so that they can maintain really a stable life, a family and job.
Is that one of the responsibilities that the NAMI takes on, to try to educate and...
Absolutely, educate and pursue policies that will give your State National Guard in Texas the tools it needs to serve these individuals where they live in their community, on the job, in the family, in the home, so that they can really, we don't want to see them lose the supports they have in the community. We want the supports in the communities to be available to them so they can maintain a stable lifestyle.